Bamidele Falade had millions in the bank. He had a massive mansion, money to burn, and a silence that hurt more than loneliness. Until one ordinary Saturday, he heard something he shouldn't have. Ngozi Nwachukwu, the cleaner, her voice trembling over the phone, said, "My daughter is going to her school party all by herself. She just wanted to have a father there." At that exact moment, Bamidele felt the ground vanish beneath his feet, because he had everything, except the only thing he had always dreamed of, being a father, and what he decided to do next would change a child's life forever, as well as his own. Our stories have traveled far. Where are you watching from today? Share with us in the comments. Bamidele Falade woke up once again alone in that massive mansion in Ikoyi. At 49 years old, he had everything Lagos high society considered success: wealth, respect, a brilliant career in the real estate sector. But that Saturday morning, like so many others, he felt the heavy weight of silence, a silence that hurt more than any words. He got out of his king-size bed, walked barefoot across the cold marble floor, and looked out the window. Down below, he saw a father playing with his young son on the street. Something squeezed in his chest. It always did. The divorce had happened 3 years ago. Simi was an elegant, cultured woman, perfect for high society events. But when he mentioned he wanted to be a father, she was direct. "Bamidele, I never wanted children. You knew that." He knew, but he had kept the hope that she would change her mind. She didn't, and he didn't push. He let the marriage fade away without fights, without scandals, just a silent, polite end, like everything else in his life. Now, alone in that huge house, Bamidele realized the emptiness was greater than any professional achievement. He looked at the clock, 10 a.m. on a Saturday, and he had absolutely nothing to do, nobody waiting for him, no child's voice filling the house with life. He went down to the kitchen and made some coffee. The routine was always the same, always identical, always empty. The Italian imported espresso machine made the same sound every day. He poured the drink into a fine porcelain cup and sat at the huge kitchen table. A table made for 8 people. Him, all alone. He thought about calling a friend but gave up. He wasn't in the mood to pretend everything was fine. It wasn't. Their mutual friends had sided with Simi. The few who remained couldn't understand why he had gotten divorced. After all, Simi was perfect, wasn't she? The doorbell rang. It was Ngozi, the cleaner who came on Saturdays to handle the deep cleaning. Bamidele opened the automated gate and went back to the living room, sitting on the sofa with his laptop. "Good morning, sir." Her voice was always cheerful, always polite. "Good morning, Ngozi. Please feel free." He knew very little about her. He knew she was a single mother, that she worked in several houses during the week, that she was always punctual and did her job with dedication. But they had never conversed much beyond the basics. She guarded her personal life carefully, and he never asked. Each in their own place. That was how it worked. Bamidele tried to focus on his emails again, but he couldn't. The restlessness was strong that day. It was as if something was about to happen, though he didn't know what. He got up, poured more coffee, and wandered aimlessly around the house. He passed the dining room, the library, the study. Everything was pristine, everything empty. That was when he heard it. Ngozi was in the kitchen, talking on the phone. Her voice was different, low, almost a whisper, but heavy, with something Bamidele recognized immediately: restrained despair. He stopped in the hallway, not wanting to eavesdrop, but unable to move. He stood there, holding his empty coffee cup in his hands. "Chidi, please, it's just a school party," Chisom is asking. Bamidele felt the discomfort of listening to something private, but something kept him there. Perhaps it was the pain in her voice. Perhaps it was the child's name. "Chisom, I'm not demanding anything from you. I'm just asking you to go once. Just once." Her voice trembled. Bamidele clenched his fists without realizing it. The cup almost slipped from his hands. She sees the other children with their fathers. She asks me, "Why does he never show up?" More silence. Then, Ngozi's heavy breathing. Bamidele could hear her struggle not to cry. "You don't have to stay long. Just show up, just so she can see her father exists." Bamidele closed his eyes. He knew that pain in a different way, but he knew it. It was the pain of wanting something that seemed impossible, the pain of seeing a dream slip through one's fingers. "All right, Chidi, all right. Sorry to bother you." The call ended. Bamidele heard the phone hit the counter, and then, as if talking to herself, Ngozi let slip, "My daughter just wanted to have a father at her school party." Those words cut through Bamidele, as if they were addressed directly to him. He felt a squeeze in his chest so strong he had to lean against the wall. It wasn't pity, it was identification, the immediate understanding of a pain he also carried, just from the other side. He had everything and couldn't be a father. She had almost nothing, but she had a daughter who wanted a present father. Bamidele returned to the living room, but he could no longer work. He sat there, staring into space, thinking about that phrase, that broken voice, that child he didn't even know, but who suddenly seemed to exist inside him as a possibility he had never considered. Was there a way to help? Could he make a difference in that little girl's life? The questions spun in his mind without answers. When Ngozi finished her work and came to say goodbye, Bamidele stood up. He looked at her truly, perhaps for the first time. He saw a young woman with a tired but steady gaze, a woman who carried the world on her shoulders and still smiled. She had delicate features, hands marked by hard work, and a silent dignity that he admired. "Ngozi, can I speak to you for a minute?" She seemed surprised but agreed. "Of course, sir." He took a deep breath. He didn't quite know what he was going to say, but he knew he had to say something. That conversation he had overheard by accident couldn't simply be ignored, not when he had the chance to do something, not when that pain was so similar to his own. But did he have the right to get involved? Ngozi stood in the living room, holding her bag with both hands. She seemed tense, as if expecting a complaint about her work. Bamidele noticed and tried to soften his tone. "It's nothing bad. Please, sit down." She hesitated, but sat on the edge of the sofa. Bamidele stood, nervous. It was not common for him to show nervousness, but this situation was completely out of his comfort zone. He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture he made when he was insecure. "I overheard you on the phone earlier, by accident." Ngozi's eyes widened, and she immediately bowed her head. Shame took over her face. Her cheeks flushed. "I am sorry, sir. I didn't mean to disturb you. I try not to take calls while working, but it was about my daughter." No. Bamidele raised his hand, interrupting her. "You did nothing wrong. I heard about the school party." Ngozi flushed even deeper. She seemed to want to disappear, looking at her own hands clasped in her lap. "It's just a silly little party. It's nothing major. But it is important to her, isn't it?" Ngozi looked up, surprised by the question, swallowed hard, and agreed. "Yes, Chisom is 4 years old. She sees her friends with their fathers and gets very quiet. You know, she doesn't complain, but I know it hurts her." Bamidele felt that squeeze again. He sat in the armchair opposite Ngozi, leaning forward. He wanted her to know he was taking this seriously. "And her father doesn't want to go?" Ngozi gave a bitter smile. It was a sad smile, loaded with years of disappointment. "Her father never wanted anything to do with her. He vanished when I was pregnant. He shows up once in a while, but only to cause me distress. He doesn't care about Chisom, he never has. And you raise her alone?" "Yes, just me and my mother. We do what we can." Ngozi sighed. "I work in 4 houses during the week. I wake up at 5:00 a.m. I get back at 7:00 p.m. My mother stays with Chisom while I work. It's exhausting, but it's the life we have." Bamidele fell silent for a few seconds. He thought about how different his life was, how he had so much and she had so little, and yet she had something he never had. Someone who called her mother, and a child who wanted a father. Ngozi started to stand up, thinking the conversation was over, but he spoke again. "Ngozi, I have a strange proposal for you." She paused mid-motion, looking at him with suspicion. "What kind of proposal?" Bamidele took a deep breath. He knew what he was about to say would sound absurd, perhaps even offensive, but he had to try. "I could go to the party and pretend to be Chisom's father, just for that day, just so she doesn't feel different from the other children." The silence that followed was heavy. Ngozi stared at him, as if he were speaking another language. She blinked several times, trying to process what she had heard. "Are you joking with me, sir?" "No, I am speaking seriously. But why? You don't even know us." Bamidele looked away. How could he explain without sounding pathetic? How could he say that he had everything except the only thing he truly wanted? How could he admit that his life, so perfect from the outside, was actually empty? "Because I always wanted to be a father, and never could. My ex-wife didn't want children, and now I am alone. And maybe, just maybe, this could make sense for both of us." Ngozi shook her head in disbelief, stood up, and took a few steps back. "Sir, with all due respect, this is madness. You can't just appear out of nowhere in my daughter's life and pretend to be her father. It will confuse her. It would be just one day, just the party. And if she gets attached to you? What if she starts asking for you?" Ngozi's voice was getting louder, more desperate. She already suffers enough from her father's absence. I won't let anyone else enter her life, only to disappear later. Bamidele had no answer for that. He hadn't thought it through. He only knew he wanted to help. He wanted to feel, if only for a few hours, what it was like to be in that role. But he understood her fear. If he were in her shoes, he would be afraid too. Ngozi stood up, clearly uncomfortable, and hurriedly grabbed her bag. I am sorry, sir, but I cannot accept this. It isn't right. She walked toward the door. Bamidele stood up too, feeling that he had ruined everything, feeling that he had been far too invasive. Ngozi, wait. She stopped but didn't turn around. I know it sounds strange, but I have no intention other than to help, I swear. Ngozi turned slightly, looking at him with tearful eyes. A tear ran down her face. You don't understand. I spent my entire pregnancy alone. I spent my daughter's first years alone. I learned not to depend on anyone, and now you appear offering this, and I don't know if it's kindness or pity. It isn't pity. Then what is it? Bamidele held her gaze. For the first time in a long time, he spoke the raw, naked truth, without filters, without protection. It is my need, not yours. Ngozi blinked in surprise. She hadn't expected that answer. She hadn't expected that brutal honesty. He continued, his voice lower, more vulnerable. I am 49 years old. I have money, I have a house, I have everything, except the only thing I really wanted, to be a father. And when I heard you talking to that man, when I heard you say that your daughter just wanted a father at her party, I felt that maybe, just maybe, this was my chance to feel that, even if only for a day. Ngozi stood still, processing, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. She looked at him again, this time with less anger and more understanding. This is very crazy, sir. I know. And if it goes wrong, then we stop. But what if it goes right? She bit her lip, thinking. Bamidele saw the internal struggle happening in her eyes. Fear, hope, suspicion, fatigue, all at once. Finally, she sighed. The party is next Saturday, at 2:00 p.m. Bamidele felt his heart race. He couldn't believe she had accepted. I will be there. Ngozi nodded, but before leaving, she looked at him with seriousness, with a firmness that allowed no games. If you hurt my daughter, I will never forgive you. I won't hurt her, I promise. Ngozi left, and Bamidele was alone again, but this time, the silence was different. The week passed slowly for Bamidele. Each day seemed to drag, as if time had changed its rhythm. He tried to focus on his work, on meetings with investors, on contracts he needed to review, but his head was elsewhere. It was at that little school party that would happen on Saturday. He didn't know the girl's full name, didn't know what she looked like, didn't know if she was shy or talkative, if she liked to play or draw, but he thought about her. He thought about what it would be like to look at that child and pretend, even if only for a few hours, that she was his. On Monday, during an important meeting about a new development in Lekki, Bamidele realized he was not paying attention. The project manager was talking about timelines, costs, profit margins, but Bamidele was thinking about what clothes to wear on Saturday. Would it be too formal to go in a suit, too casual to go in jeans? What would a regular father wear to a school party? Mr. Falade, do you agree? The voice of the project manager brought him back. Yes, of course. You can proceed with the planning. He had no idea what he had agreed to. On Thursday night, the phone rang. It was Ngozi. Bamidele answered on the second ring, anxious. Hi, Ngozi. Is everything okay? She hesitated on the other end of the line. Bamidele heard a heavy breath. I need to tell you something about Chisom. Bamidele sat on the edge of the bed, paying close attention. His heart raced. You can speak. She asked who was coming with us to the party. I said a friend of mine was coming along. I didn't say it was you. I didn't say you were going to pretend to be her father. Bamidele thought for a moment. Do you think I should speak to her beforehand? I don't know. I am afraid of how she will react. She is small, you know? And at the same time, she is smart. I'm afraid of confusing her head. Ngozi sighed. She already asked so much about her father. She keeps looking at the other fathers picking up their children at school. I see the sadness in her eyes. Bamidele took a deep breath. He felt the weight of the responsibility. Ngozi, if you want to back out, I understand. You don't have to do this if you think it will harm her. It's not that. I just want it to work out. I want her to be happy on this day. Even if it's only for this day, she will be. I will do everything possible for that. Ngozi was silent for a few seconds. Bamidele heard a small voice in the background. It was Chisom asking something. Thank you, Bamidele, truly. It was the first time she had called him just Bamidele without the sir. He smiled. "We'll see each other Saturday." When he hung up, Bamidele stood staring at the phone. It was all strange. It was risky. It was completely outside of what he knew. But at the same time, it was the most real thing he had done in years. On Saturday morning, Bamidele woke up early. He had slept poorly, anxious. He showered, shaved carefully, and chose a casual but well-kept outfit. Nothing too formal, nothing that would draw too much attention. He wanted to look like a regular father going to a school party. He opted for dark jeans, a light blue shirt, and casual shoes. He looked at himself in the mirror several times, fixed his hair, messed it up, and fixed it again. He was nervous, like a teenager going on a first date. He looked at himself in the mirror and felt something strange, anxiety, fear, but also an excitement he hadn't felt in a long time. It was as if he were about to do something that would change his life forever. He left the house at 1:00 p.m. The school was in Surulere, not very far. Ngozi had sent the address by message. He put it in the GPS, even though he knew he didn't need to. He just wanted to be sure he wouldn't get lost. On the way, he stopped at a toy store. He stood looking at the shelves, not knowing what to buy. Dolls, games, stuffed animals, what would a 4-year-old girl like? He ended up choosing a brown teddy bear, soft, with a red bow around its neck, simple but cute. When he arrived at the school, he saw the gate decorated with colorful balloons, children running, fathers talking, mothers taking photos. A common scene, but to Bamidele, it was completely new. He had never been to a school party, had never seen that mix of joy and chaos. He parked the car and sat there for a few minutes. He took a deep breath several times. He was really doing this. He was about to enter that school and pretend to be the father of a child he had never seen. He got out of the car, grabbed the teddy bear, and walked to the entrance. That was when he saw Ngozi. She was wearing a simple floral dress, her hair tied back in a ponytail, holding the hand of a little girl with curly hair and big, curious eyes. Chisom. Bamidele felt his chest tighten. The girl was small, delicate, and had a timid smile on her face. She wore a dress with white, flat shoes. She held a yellow balloon in her free hand. Ngozi saw Bamidele and waved. He approached, feeling his legs weak. Each step seemed to weigh a ton. Hi. Ngozi smiled nervously. Then she looked at her daughter. Chisom, this is Bamidele, Mommy's friend I told you about. The girl looked at him with those huge, curious eyes. Bamidele knelt down to be at her height, holding the bear. Hi, Chisom. How are you? She nodded but said nothing. She just looked at her mother as if asking for permission to trust him. Ngozi ran her hand through her daughter's hair with affection. He came to the party with us and brought a present for you. Bamidele extended the bear. Chisom looked at the toy, then at him, and finally took it with care. Thank you. Chisom hugged the bear and then looked at Bamidele again. Are you going to stay with me? Bamidele felt his throat tighten. He looked at Ngozi, whose eyes were tearful. I will, if you want. She extended her tiny hand. Bamidele looked at Ngozi, who nodded. He held the girl's hand so small, so trusting, and stood up. The three entered the school together. The courtyard was full of people, tables with sweets, children playing, music playing. A teacher came to greet Ngozi and immediately looked at Bamidele with a smile. Hi, are you Chisom's father? Bamidele opened his mouth, but before he could answer, Chisom squeezed his hand and said naturally, Yes, he is my father. That hit Bamidele like lightning. He looked at Ngozi, who had tearful eyes. He looked at the teacher, who was smiling. He looked at Chisom, who was staring at him with a trust he didn't know if he deserved. Yes, I am her father. The teacher smiled. It's so good that you came. Chisom was anxious. She went off, calling other children. Bamidele stood there, still holding Chisom's hand. Ngozi approached and whispered, She accepted you too quickly. Bamidele looked at the girl, who was now pulling him toward the play area. Come, Daddy, let's play. He couldn't say anything. He just followed. And at that moment, something inside him began to change. It was no longer pretending. It was real. Chisom pulled Bamidele by the hand with an excitement he didn't expect. The girl led him to a table full of art supplies, colored paper, glue, glitter, markers. Other children were already sitting, making drawings with their fathers. Some fathers looked bored, looking at their phones. Others were totally involved, helping their children with attention. Sit here, Daddy. Let's make a drawing together. Bamidele looked around, half lost. He had never done arts and crafts with a child. He had never sat at a low table, surrounded by paper and paint. But there he was, trying to fit into that world that had always seemed so distant. He sat down carefully, his long legs too big for that small chair. He sat beside Chisom, who was already choosing colors with seriousness. She picked up a pink paper and looked at him, waiting for approval. "Do you like pink?" Bamidele smiled, touched by her concern. "I do. What about you?" "I love it." She laughed, and the sound of that laugh did something strange in his chest. It was pure, without malice, without weight. It was the laugh of someone who still believed the world was good. It was the laugh of someone who had never been hurt by broken promises. Ngozi was a few steps away, talking to other mothers. Bamidele noticed that she looked at them from time to time. He felt the attention in her gaze. Chisom handed him a blue marker. "Draw a house." He obeyed, drawing a simple house with a triangular roof and a door in the middle. His lines were straight, precise, like the architectural projects he approved at work. Chisom clapped her hands. "Now draw us inside." Bamidele paused, looked at the girl who was waiting anxiously, took the marker, and drew 3 stick figures. A woman, a child, and a man. His fingers trembled a little as he drew. Chisom pointed at the figures with enthusiasm. "This is Mommy, this is me, and this is you." Bamidele swallowed hard. That was more intense than he imagined. "Yes, it's the 3 of us." Chisom took the red marker and began to draw hearts around the figures. Many hearts, big and small. Bamidele watched, not knowing what to say. He felt something growing inside him, something he didn't know how to name. It was as if each heart she drew pierced a wall he had built around his own heart. Suddenly, a boy approached the table. He was about 5 years old and looked at Chisom with curiosity. "Chisom, is this your father?" She agreed with pride, smiling wide. "Yes." The boy looked at Bamidele with admiration. "He seems cool." "My father didn't come today. He said he was busy." The boy's voice got lower. "He is always busy." Bamidele saw the sadness in the boy's eye and felt like saying something, but didn't know what. How to console a child he didn't even know. Chisom, with typical childhood innocence, said, "But he will come next time, right?" The boy shrugged, not very convinced, and left. Bamidele looked at Chisom, who continued drawing as if nothing had happened. But he knew that scene had an impact. He knew that for that child sitting beside him, her father being present meant everything. It meant not being the sad kid left alone at the party. After some time, the teacher called everyone to the outdoor area, where there was a dance presentation. The children climbed onto a small, improvised stage and began to dance to a lively song. Chisom was in the front, moving with all the energy she had. She didn't dance perfectly, but she danced with her heart. Bamidele was beside Ngozi watching. Their shoulders almost touched. She looked at him from the side. "You are doing well." He gave a small smile. "I am trying." Chisom is happy. I see that in her. She is different today. "What about you?" Ngozi looked away, focusing on her daughter dancing on the stage. "I am confused, but at the same time relieved. She needed this, and you didn't?" She looked at him, surprised by the question. Nobody ever asked about her, only her daughter. "I am used to doing everything alone. I don't know if I know how to accept help." Bamidele understood. He had also spent years doing everything alone, controlling everything, not letting anyone in, building walls so high that nobody could climb them. Sometimes we need to let people in. Ngozi didn't answer, but he saw that she had heard. He saw that the words had reached her. When the presentation ended, the children ran back to their parents. Chisom jumped into Bamidele's arms without warning. He almost lost his balance, but held her firmly. She was light, but at the same time, she was the most significant weight he had ever held. "Did you see me dance, Daddy?" "I did. You were the best." She laughed, hugging his neck tightly. Bamidele closed his eyes for a second. It was so simple, so complete. It was everything he had always wanted and never knew how to ask for. Ngozi approached, watching the scene with emotion. "Chisom, let's get some puff-puff." The girl slid out of Bamidele's arms and ran to the table of snacks. Ngozi stood there looking at him with an expression that was hard to decipher. "Thank you for this. Seriously." Bamidele shook his head. "I am the one who thanks you for letting me be here." They stood in silence for a few seconds, until Chisom shouted from afar, "Daddy, come eat puff-puff." Ngozi laughed softly. "I think you are officially her father now." Bamidele looked at the girl, who waved at him with a piece of puff-puff in her hand, sugar already smeared on her face, and felt something he hadn't felt in years, belonging. He walked over to Chisom, took the piece she offered, and ate it. She laughed with sugar on her teeth, and Bamidele realized He had never been so happy doing something so simple. The sweetness of the snack was nothing compared to the sweetness of that moment. The party went on, and Bamidele began to let go. He played tag, even in his casual clothes, that weren't entirely meant for running around. He helped build a castle of toy blocks that collapsed 3 times before they were satisfied. He took photos beside Chisom, silly poses she made up. Each moment was a discovery. Each smile of hers was a cure for something inside him that had been broken for a long time. When the party ended, Ngozi picked Chisom up in her arms. She was visibly tired. Her little eyes were already closing. "Let's go home, love." Chisom opened her eyes for a second and looked at Bamidele with sleepy eyes. "Are you coming with us, Daddy?" Bamidele looked at Ngozi, who seemed as surprised as he was. They hadn't agreed on this. They hadn't planned anything beyond the party. He didn't know what to answer. Bamidele stood still, looking at Chisom. The girl was waiting for an answer, with those tired eyes, but still full of hope. The teddy bear was squeezed against her chest. Ngozi held her daughter, also waiting, not knowing what to say. The silence among the 3 of them was loaded with meaning. "Chisom, Bamidele needs to go to his house," Ngozi said carefully, trying not to disappoint her daughter. Her voice was gentle but firm. The girl pouted. Tears began to form in the corners of her eyes. "But I want him to come with us." Bamidele felt his chest tighten. He didn't want to be another broken promise in that child's life. He didn't want to be like Chidi, but at the same time, he knew he had to respect the boundaries Ngozi established. They had agreed only on the party, nothing beyond that. He knelt to Chisom's height and ran his hand through her hair affectionately. The soft curls slipped through his fingers. "I need to go now, but we will see each other again, I promise." "When?" The question came quickly, directly. It was a simple question, but loaded with so much weight. Bamidele looked at Ngozi, seeking permission. She looked away, clearly divided. "Soon, very soon." Chisom accepted it, but didn't seem happy. She hugged the bear tighter. Ngozi thanked him with her eyes and took her daughter to the car. Bamidele stood there watching the 2 go, feeling an emptiness he didn't expect to feel. It was as if a part of him were leaving in that old car. He got into his own car and sat there for a few minutes just breathing. That had been more intense than he imagined. It wasn't just a favor. It wasn't just an act. It was real. Chisom had called him father, with so much naturalness that he almost forgot it was a pretense. Or was it? Could something that felt so true be considered a lie? During the following week, Bamidele tried to return to routine work, meetings, commitments, but everything seemed colorless, dull, meaningless. He picked up his phone several times, thinking about sending a message to Ngozi, but gave up. He would type and delete, type and delete. He didn't want to seem invasive. He didn't want to force anything. But he thought about Chisom all the time. He thought about her smile, about the way she had held his hand, about the trust with which she had called him father. It was Ngozi who sought him out. On Thursday night, she sent a message. Bamidele was lying in bed, trying to read a book but unable to concentrate. When the phone rang with the notification, he grabbed it so fast he almost dropped the device. "Hi, Bamidele. Chisom won't stop asking about you. She wants to know when she'll see you again." Bamidele read the message 3 times. His heart raced. He replied quickly, without thinking much. "I want to see her too. And you?" Ngozi's reply took a few minutes, minutes that seemed like hours. Bamidele stared at the screen, waiting. When the reply arrived, he smiled. "Do you want to come have dinner here at the house on Saturday?" "Nothing very special, just a simple dinner, home-cooked food." Bamidele smiled even wider. He replied without thinking twice. "I would love to." On Saturday, Bamidele drove to the address Ngozi had sent. It was a simple neighborhood in Mushin. Small houses, narrow streets, children playing on the pavement, very different from Ikoyi. It was a completely different world from his, but there was no judgment in his thoughts. There was curiosity. There was genuine interest. He parked in front of a house painted white with a small veranda in front. Ngozi opened the door before he even knocked. She must have been waiting. She was wearing casual clothes, her hair loose, without makeup, beautiful in a simple, real way, a way Simi never was. "Hi, come in." Bamidele entered and smelled the aroma of home-cooked food. The smell of garlic, spices, food made with care. The house was small but cozy. It had a living room with a worn sofa, an old television, photos on the wall, nothing luxurious. But it had life, it had history, it had love. Chisom came running from the bedroom, shouting, "Daddy!" She jumped into his arms, and Bamidele caught her in the air, laughing. The girl hugged him tightly, as if she had waited for that moment the whole week, as if he were the most important person in the world. "I thought you weren't coming. I always come when I promise." Ngozi watched the scene with a small smile on her face. There was something moving in all of this, but also something scary. She was letting this man into their lives, and she didn't know yet if this was good or dangerous. But seeing her daughter's happiness, it was hard to say no. "Come, Daddy, come see my room." Chisom pulled Bamidele by the hand, leading him to the small room at the back of the house. It had a bed with princess sheets, some toys scattered on the floor, drawings pasted on the wall, a simple room, but full of personality. "Look, this drawing, I made it thinking of you." She pointed to a paper with 3 stick figures again, the same family she had drawn at the party, but this time there were more details. There was a sun, there were flowers, there were butterflies. Bamidele felt his throat tighten. "It is beautiful. Chisom, can I make another one for you to take home?" "You can. I will put it on the fridge." She ran to get her case of markers. Bamidele stood there looking around. That small, simple room had more love than his entire mansion. It had more life than all the empty rooms he inhabited. Ngozi appeared at the door, leaning against the frame. "Sorry for the mess. There is no mess at all. It is perfect." She smiled but looked away. "Dinner is almost ready. Let's go to the table." They sat at the kitchen table. Ngozi had made jollof rice, beans, fried plantains, and chicken. Nothing fancy, but made with care. Bamidele ate as if it were the best meal of his life, and perhaps it was, not because of the food, but because of the company. "This is delicious. Thank you. It is what I know how to make. My mother taught me." Chisom was beside Bamidele, eating and talking without stopping. She told him about school, about her friends, about the cartoons she liked to watch. She talked about the teacher, about the neighbor's dog, about everything. Bamidele listened to everything with attention, asking questions, laughing at the stories. He didn't pretend interest. He was genuinely interested. Ngozi watched, seeing how patient he was, how he really cared. It wasn't just politeness, it was genuine interest, something she had never seen in Chidi. After dinner, Chisom asked Bamidele to read a story to her. He accepted without hesitation, and the 3 went to the room. Bamidele sat on the edge of the bed. Chisom lay beside him, and Ngozi stood leaning against the door, watching, observing every detail of that scene. He read calmly, making different voices for each character. Chisom laughed, interrupted, asked him to read again the parts she liked most. When the story ended, she yawned loudly. "Are you coming back?" "I am. Promise." "I promise." Chisom closed her eyes, satisfied. Bamidele sat there for a few more minutes, just looking at her sleep. Her face was so peaceful, so innocent. Ngozi approached and covered her daughter with the blanket, tucking the teddy bear beside her. The 2 left the room in silence, closing the door carefully. In the living room, Ngozi offered tea. They sat on the sofa, a little distant from each other. There was still a space between them, but it was smaller than before. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. "Thank you for letting me come." As the weeks went by, Bamidele began to be part of Chisom's routine. Every Saturday he would appear, take the girl to the park to have ice cream and play, and every time he went away, he felt a piece of himself staying behind. Ngozi observed everything with attention. She saw how Chisom was happier, more secure. The girl smiled more, slept better, and didn't make those sad questions about why she didn't have a father anymore. But Ngozi also saw how she was getting too attached, and that worried her. The fear of seeing her daughter suffer again kept her awake at night. On a Sunday afternoon, after spending the day at Muriokunola Park, Ngozi and Bamidele sat on a bench while Chisom played on the swing. Children were running through the park, parents were talking. It was a scene of normality that Bamidele had never experienced before. "Bamidele, we need to talk." He looked at her, already knowing that the conversation would be difficult. Her tone of voice made that clear. "About what? About all of this? About Chisom? About us?" Bamidele waited, preparing himself for what would come. His heart raced. Ngozi took a deep breath, gathering courage. "She is calling you daddy all the time. She tells everyone at school that she has a father now. And I don't know how far this can go. Do you want me to stop coming?" The question came out more frightened than he intended. The idea of not seeing Chisom anymore, of not seeing Ngozi anymore, was terrifying. "No, it's not that. It's that I don't know what you really want. Are you here because you want to be her father? Or are you here because you want to fill a void in your life?" The question hit Bamidele squarely. He fell silent, thinking, it was a fair question, a question he himself had asked several times in recent weeks. At first, maybe it was that, but now I can't separate things anymore. I want to be here. I want to be important to her, and to you. Ngozi looked away, focusing on Chisom, who was swinging happily, her hair flying in the wind. Bamidele, I don't know if I am ready for this. For what? To let someone in, truly, to trust. I spent years protecting myself, protecting Chisom, and now you appear, and I don't know how to deal with this. Bamidele moved a little closer, closing the distance between them on the bench. I understand, and I am not asking you to decide everything now. I am only asking you to let me continue, to let me prove that I am not going away. Ngozi looked at him with tearful eyes. A tear ran down her face. And if you do go, what if in 6 months, a year, you realize this isn't what you want? What will happen to Chisom? What will happen to me? Bamidele had no answer that guaranteed the future. Nobody did, but he was sure of the present. I won't. I know words don't mean much to you now. Chidi must have spoken many beautiful words too, but let me prove it with actions. Let me stay. Chisom shouted from afar, asking them to look at how high she was swinging. The two smiled, waved, and returned to silence. It was a moment of pause, of breath, before continuing the difficult conversation. Ngozi wiped her tears discreetly with the back of her hand. All right, we continue, but slowly, slowly. Bamidele felt an immense relief. It wasn't a promise of eternal love, but it was a chance, and he was going to make use of every second. The months went by. Bamidele began to appear not only on Saturdays but also during the week. He picked Chisom up from school when Ngozi couldn't. He took her to do homework at his house. The silent mansion began to have life. He bought colored pencils, games, children's books, and transformed one of the empty rooms in the mansion into a space for her. He painted it pink, put a small bed in, and filled it with toys. When he showed the room to Chisom for the first time, she was speechless. Then she screamed with joy and hugged him tightly. Is this my room? It is for when you want to sleep here. Ngozi began to relax, began to trust. She saw how Bamidele was consistent, how he always appeared when he promised, how he truly cared. And gradually, she began to feel something more for him, something that went beyond gratitude. One night, after putting Chisom to sleep at Ngozi's house, the two sat talking in the living room. She was leaning on the sofa, and he was sitting in the armchair. The conversation was light, about daily things, but there was a tension in the air, a good tension, loaded with possibilities. Bamidele, can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you never have children before with your ex-wife? Bamidele sighed. That question always hurt, but with Ngozi, he had no fear of being vulnerable. She didn't want them, and I didn't insist. I thought her love was enough, but it wasn't. I was mistaken, thinking I could live without being a father, but I couldn't. Do you regret not insisting? Yes, but do I regret getting divorced? No, because if I hadn't, I would never have met you, and you both are the best thing that ever happened to my life. Ngozi smiled but looked away. She moved her hands nervously. And you? Do you think of having more children? Bamidele asked. She shook her head. I barely manage with Chisom, and besides, I don't know if I could trust anyone again. Chidi destroyed me. He made me believe I was nothing, that I was lucky he was with me. Bamidele stood up and went to her, sitting beside her on the sofa. Their knees touched. You are worth so much, and anyone who doesn't see that is blind. Ngozi looked at him. The two were very close, very. Bamidele could feel her breath. He could see the small features on her face he had never noticed before. Bamidele, speak. I am afraid of falling in love with you. He held her hand, intertwining their fingers. I am afraid too. So do we stop here? No. We face the fear together. Ngozi let a tear escape. Bamidele wiped it with his thumb, caressing her face with gentleness. It was a slow, careful kiss, full of fear and hope at the same time. It was the kiss of two bruised people who were willing to try again. When they separated, Ngozi was trembling. This changes everything. I know. Chisom. We take care of her together. Ngozi agreed, still scared but also relieved. For the first time in years, she was not alone. She had someone beside her, someone who stayed, someone who didn't run when things got difficult. And Bamidele, for the first time in years, had a family. But not everything would be easy. The following months were the happiest of Bamidele's life. He woke up with purpose. He had a reason to smile. Chisom called him father without hesitation. Ngozi was beside him, and for the first time, he felt complete. He felt his life had meaning. They didn't live together yet. Ngozi wanted to go slowly, and Bamidele respected that. But he spent almost every day at her house. He helped with the bills, even when Ngozi complained. He took Chisom to school every morning. He had dinner with them. He became part of the routine. He became family. Ngozi's mother, Mama Ngozi, had accepted Bamidele easily. She saw how he treated her granddaughter, how he respected her daughter, and that was enough. One afternoon, while having coffee in the kitchen, she said to him, "Thank you for taking care of them. Ngozi deserves to be happy, and Chisom deserves to have a real father." Bamidele felt his eyes burn. "I am the one who thanks you for letting me be part of the family." On a Friday morning, Bamidele was in his office when Ngozi's phone number called him. He saw her name on the screen and answered, smiling, expecting to hear her sweet voice. "Hi, love." But on the other end, her voice was trembling. It was different. It was frightened. "Bamidele," he appeared. "Who?" "Chidi. He was at the school gate when I went to pick up Chisom." Bamidele stood up from his chair, knocking over some papers in the process. "Did he do anything? Did he speak to Chisom?" "No. He just stood looking from afar. But when I came out with her, he came to speak to me." Ngozi's voice was getting more and more shaky. "Bamidele, I was so afraid. What did he say?" Ngozi took a deep breath, trying to control the crying that threatened to break out. "He said he heard there is a man in my life wanting to play father to his daughter. He said he wants to meet this man. He said he has rights. He spoke of a lawyer." Bamidele clenched his fist with so much force that his knuckles turned white. "Rights. He abandoned you both. He has no right at all. I know, Bamidele, but he was different. Seriously. He wasn't mocking like he usually does. He was cold." Bamidele felt anger rise, hot and intense. "Where are you now?" "At home with Chisom. I locked all the doors. Stay there. I am coming." He hung up, grabbed his keys, and left the office without warning anyone. His secretary tried to say he had a meeting in 20 minutes, but he didn't hear. Nothing mattered other than getting to Ngozi and Chisom. On the way, 1,000 thoughts crossed his mind. Chidi couldn't come back now. He couldn't destroy everything they had built. He couldn't take Chisom from them. The traffic was horrible, and each red light seemed an eternity. When he arrived at Ngozi's house, she opened the door with red eyes. She had cried a lot. Bamidele hugged her tightly, feeling her tremble in his arms. "Are you okay? I will resolve this." "How?" "I don't know yet, but I will." Chisom appeared in the living room, holding the teddy bear Bamidele had given her. She seemed frightened, sensing the tension in the air. "Hi, Daddy." Bamidele knelt down and opened his arms. She ran and hugged him. He closed his eyes, feeling the weight of that responsibility. He couldn't let anything happen to her. He couldn't let Chidi destroy the security she finally had. "Chisom, go play in your room for a little bit. Daddy needs to talk to Mommy." She looked at her mother, who agreed. Chisom obeyed, but before leaving, she looked at Bamidele with those big eyes. "You won't go away, right, Daddy?" The question broke his heart. "Never. I will never go away." She smiled, relieved, and left. When she left, Ngozi sat on the sofa, exhausted. She seemed to have aged 10 years in a day. "He is going to try to take her from me, Bamidele. I know he is. He said he has a father's rights. He won't succeed. We won't let him. But what if the court sides with him? He is the biological father, and I am just a single mother who works as a cleaner. He can hire a good lawyer." Bamidele held her hands firmly, looking straight into her eyes. "You are not just that. You are the woman who raised this girl alone, who gave love, food, shelter, education. You are everything she has, and I will prove that to any judge necessary." Ngozi wept, but this time with relief, with gratitude. "Thank you." They spent the weekend tense, waiting for any move from Chidi. Bamidele slept on the sofa, not wanting to leave the two alone. Every noise on the street made them all alert. And on Monday, he appeared again. This time, he sent a message to Ngozi. "I need to talk to you and the new father of my daughter. Tomorrow at 3:00 p.m. at Muriokunola Park. If you don't show up, I am going straight to the court." Ngozi showed the message to Bamidele. He read it and felt his blood boil. His hands shook with anger. "He is trying to intimidate us, and it is working. We are going, but I will speak for both of us." The next day, Bamidele and Ngozi went to the park. Chisom stayed with her grandmother. Mama Ngozi had held her granddaughter tightly, promising that everything would be fine. They sat on a bench and waited. The park was full of people running, children playing, but they saw none of it. They only waited. Chidi appeared 10 minutes later. He was a man of ordinary appearance, but with a cold gaze, short hair, unshaven face, simple clothes. He approached and sat opposite them, without greeting. He had a cynical smile on his face. "So you are the guy who is playing father to my daughter?" Bamidele did not look away, holding his gaze with firmness. "I am the man who is taking care of her, unlike you." Chidi gave a mocking smile, as if that were funny. "Taking care, or buying her affection with presents and outings? I am not buying anything. I am giving what you never gave. Presents, attention, love." Chidi leaned forward, his smile vanishing. "Look, I didn't come here to fight. I came to make a proposal." Ngozi squeezed Bamidele's hand, afraid of what would come. "What proposal?" Chidi looked straight at Bamidele, ignoring Ngozi completely. "You pay me a monthly sum, and I vanish for good. I'll sign any paper you want. I'll give up custody, rights, everything. I'll let you play happy family." Bamidele felt disgust, physical disgust, a desire to vomit. "You are selling your daughter?" Chidi shrugged. "I am being practical. You want me to vanish. I want money. Everyone wins." Ngozi stood up, trembling with rage, her hands clenched in fists. "You are disgusting. You are despicable." Chidi shrugged again, as if that did not affect him. "Think about it, because if you don't accept, I am going to the court and asking for joint custody, and then you are going to have to share Chisom with me. And I guarantee I will make sure to disrupt your lives. I'll pick her up every weekend. I'll take her far away." Bamidele stood up too, placing himself between Chidi and Ngozi. "We are not giving you a single kobo." Chidi smiled. "Then we'll see each other in court. I hope you have a good lawyer, because I will." He left, whistling. Ngozi began to cry desperately. Bamidele hugged her, but inside, he was in panic. The dispute had begun, and he didn't know if he would be able to win. The following days were of anguish. Bamidele hired one of the best lawyers in Lagos, Barrister Femi Banjo, known for winning difficult family cases. He explained the whole situation, showed evidence that Chidi had abandoned Chisom since birth, old messages Ngozi had saved, proof that he had never paid child support, witnesses who could confirm his absence. The lawyer was direct, without beating around the bush. The court tends to favor the mother in cases like this, but since he is the biological father, he has rights. It may be that they grant supervised visits. Ngozi almost fainted upon hearing this. She turned pale, her hands trembling. "He can't be alone with her. He doesn't care about her. He only wants money. I know, and we will prove that. But you need to be prepared for a long fight. This could take months." Bamidele held Ngozi's hand, feeling it cold. "We will fight as long as necessary." Meanwhile, Chisom noticed that something was wrong. She asked her mother why she was sad. She asked Bamidele why he was serious. They tried to hide it, smiling when she appeared, but children always feel. One night, Chisom went to Ngozi's room and climbed onto the bed, hugging her teddy bear. "Mommy, is Daddy going away?" Ngozi hugged her daughter, trying not to cry in front of her. "No, love, he is not. Why do you ask? But you are sad, and Daddy is too. I heard you talking low." Ngozi kissed her daughter's forehead. "We are just tired, but everything is fine, I promise." Chisom hugged her mother tightly. "I love you, Mommy, and I love Daddy too." Ngozi couldn't hold back the tears this time. "We love you too, my daughter, very much, more than anything in the world." The following week, the hearing was scheduled. Bamidele, Ngozi, and the lawyer went to the family court in Ikeja. The building was large, imposing, and full of people, parents fighting over children, families broken. Chidi was there, accompanied by a cheap lawyer who knew how to play dirty. The hearing was tense. Bamidele sat beside Ngozi, holding her hand throughout the process. Chidi's lawyer tried to paint Ngozi as a mother who was manipulating the daughter, putting a stranger in place of the real father. He said Bamidele was an opportunist, a rich man who wanted to play family without assuming real responsibilities. Bamidele listened to it all in silence, with his fists clenched under the table. Ngozi cried several times, needing to leave the room to compose herself. Their lawyer rebutted forcefully, showed proof of abandonment, showed that Chidi had never paid child support, never visited, never shown real interest in the daughter. He showed old messages where Chidi clearly stated he did not want the child. The judge listened to everything with attention, making notes. He was a middle-aged man of serious expression. At the end, he said, "I will analyze the evidence and give my decision in 15 days. 15 days that seemed an eternity. During this time, Bamidele and Ngozi drew even closer. They talked until late, planned the future, dreamed together, but there was always that shadow. What if Chidi won? What if they had to share Chisom with him? On one of those nights, While Chisom was sleeping, Ngozi asked in a low voice, "Bamidele, if the judge grants joint custody, will you still stay here?" He looked at her, surprised. He couldn't believe she still doubted. "Did you think I would go away?" "I don't know. This is all very difficult, and I would understand if you wanted to give up." Bamidele held her face with both hands, forcing her to look into his eyes. "I will never give up. I love you, and I love Chisom, and nothing is going to change that. No judge, no Chidi, nothing." Ngozi kissed him desperately, as if that kiss could erase all fears, as if that kiss could guarantee the future. Finally, the day of the decision arrived. They returned to the court, tense. Ngozi's hands were cold. Bamidele had not slept well all night. The judge entered, sat down, and began to read the ruling. The silence in the room was absolute. Analyzing the evidence presented, it is clear that the respondent, Mr. Chidi Opara, abandoned the minor since birth. There is no record of visits, of child support payments, or of any type of emotional involvement with the child. Ngozi squeezed Bamidele's hand with so much force that it hurt, but it was a good pain. It was hope. The judge continued, adjusting his glasses. Furthermore, the recent attempts at contact seemed to be motivated by financial interest and not by paternal affection. Therefore, I deny the request for joint custody. Ngozi let out a muffled cry of relief, covering her mouth with her hand. Bamidele closed his eyes, thanking in silence. Their lawyer smiled, satisfied. The judge was not finished. "However, I grant the respondent the right to supervised visits once a month, should he demonstrate a real interest in building a relationship with the minor. The visits must occur in a neutral environment, with the presence of a responsible person designated by the mother." Ngozi's smile vanished. Relief gave way to fear again. Bamidele felt his stomach churn. Chidi smiled, satisfied. Even though he had not won custody, he had secured a loophole. He had secured a way to continue tormenting them. When they left the court, Ngozi was devastated, unable to stop thinking about having to hand Chisom over to Chidi once a month. He is going to use this to torment us. He is going to make Chisom suffer, just to hurt us. Bamidele embraced her, but he too was worried. No, he won't, because we won't let him. But inside, Bamidele was also afraid. 2 weeks passed since the judge's decision. Chidi had not appeared for any visit, had not called, had not sent a message, had not given any sign of life. Bamidele and Ngozi began to think he had given up, that he had realized he would not get easy money from them, but they were mistaken. On a Thursday afternoon, Ngozi received a call from an unknown number. She was working, cleaning the house of a client in Ikeja GRA. She answered with caution. "Hello, Ngozi. It's Chidi." She was going to hang up immediately, but he spoke quickly, almost desperately. "Wait, I just want to talk without lawyers, without judges, just you and me. I have nothing to say to you. I know you are angry, but I need you to listen to me, please." His voice was different, less cynical, more tired. Ngozi hesitated. Something in his voice was different, less aggressive, more human. "What do you want? Meet me. Just 5 minutes in the same place as before. Today at 6:00 p.m. Why? Because I need to tell you the truth." He hung up. Ngozi stood holding the phone. She didn't know if she should go. She didn't trust him. But there was something in that call that left her curious. Something different. She told Bamidele as soon as she finished work. She called him on the way home. He was in a meeting but went out to answer when he saw it was her. "Hi, love. Is everything okay?" "Bamidele," Chidi called. He felt his stomach churn. What did he want? Ngozi told him about the request for a meeting. Bamidele was direct, categorical. "Don't go. It's a trap. And if it isn't, Bamidele, this man tried to extort you, tried to take Chisom from you. Why do you believe him now? I don't believe him. But I want to hear what he has to say." Just that. Bamidele took a deep breath, trying to control his frustration. He ran his hand through his hair, nervous. "Then I am going with you. He asked me to go alone. I don't care. I am going." At 6:00 p.m., Bamidele and Ngozi were at Moriokunola Park. The sun was setting, painting everything golden. Families were having picnics, children were running, but they saw none of it. Chidi was already there, sitting on the same bench as before. When he saw Bamidele, he made a face of disapproval, but said nothing, only sighed. They sat down. Chidi looked at Ngozi, ignoring Bamidele for a few seconds. "I asked you to come alone, and I brought him. If you have something to say it in front of him." Ngozi's voice was firm. Chidi sighed again. He seemed tired, defeated. had deep dark circles, and his clothes were crumpled. "All right, I'll be direct. I give up." Ngozi was confused. "Give up on what?" "On everything. On the visits, on the fight, on trying to be part of Chisom's life." Bamidele crossed his arms, suspicious. "Why? What changed?" Chidi looked at his own hands, avoiding their gaze. "I realized I am no good at being a father. I never was. I was only trying to get easy money out of you. But it's not worth it. It's not worth the stress. It's not worth the guilt." He paused. "And I am tired of being who I am." Ngozi shook her head, unable to believe what she was hearing. "Are you speaking seriously?" "I am. I will sign any paper you want. I will give up all rights. But on one condition." Bamidele leaned forward, alert. "What condition?" Chidi looked straight at him for the first time, with something resembling respect. "I want you to adopt her officially." The silence that followed was heavy. Ngozi looked at Bamidele, who was in shock. He blinked several times, trying to process it. Chidi continued, his voice lower. "I know you take care of her better than I ever will. I know she calls you father, and I know you love her truly. So it makes sense. You adopt her. I leave the scene, and everyone moves on with their lives." Ngozi was speechless. Bamidele was too. Neither of them expected that. Chidi stood up, preparing to leave. "Think about it. But I will wait only until next week. After that, I vanish, with or without signed paper." He went away, leaving the two alone on the bench. Bamidele and Ngozi sat there, trying to process what had just happened. "Do you think he is speaking seriously?" Ngozi asked after a long silence. "I don't know, but if he is, this changes everything." That night, Bamidele could not sleep. He lay awake in bed in the mansion, looking at the ceiling, thinking about Chidi's proposal. To adopt Chisom, to be her father, truly not only emotionally, but legally too, to have his name on her birth certificate. He wanted it, God, how he wanted it, but he was afraid of not being good enough, afraid of failing, afraid of not being able to give her everything she deserved. The next day, he went to Ngozi's house. Chisom was at school, so they were alone. The house was quiet, silent. They sat on the sofa, side by side. "I decided," he said, looking at her. Ngozi looked at him, hopeful. Her heart raced. "I want to adopt Chisom. If you let me." Ngozi began to weep tears of relief, of joy, of fear, all mixed together. Bamidele drew close, holding her hands. "But before that, I need to ask you something." "What?" Bamidele took a deep breath. He had not planned to do this at that moment. He had no ring, he had no flowers, he had nothing. But he felt it was the right time. He knelt in front of her, right there in the small living room. "Marry me." Ngozi's eyes widened. Her mouth opened in surprise. She was not expecting that. "Bamidele, I know it is quick. I know we are in the middle of a mess, but I don't want to wait anymore. I want to build a family with you. I want to wake up every day by your side. I want to be Chisom's father. I want to be your husband." Ngozi wept even more, the tears falling without stopping. "Are you sure? Are you sure of all of this?" "Absolute. I have never been so sure of anything in my life." She pulled him into a desperate, urgent kiss. When they parted, she whispered against his lips, "Yes, I will marry you." Bamidele smiled. For the first time in months, he felt that everything was going to work out, and this time, it really was. 3 months later, Bamidele and Ngozi were at the registry office. Chidi had signed all the papers, giving up custody of Chisom definitively. He had appeared sober, serious, and signed everything without hesitating. Bamidele's lawyer guaranteed everything was correct, that there were no loopholes. The adoption process was underway, and the lawyer assured it would be approved without problems. It was only a matter of time. They got married in a simple ceremony, right at the Ikoyi marriage registry, with only family and some close friends. Mama Ngozi wept throughout the ceremony. Chisom was the flower girl, wearing a white dress Bamidele made sure to buy in one of the best children's shops in Lagos. She was radiant, holding the rings with pride, a huge smile on her face. When the registrar asked if there was any impediment, Chisom shouted from the back, "No, they have to get married." Everyone laughed. Bamidele and Ngozi exchanged emotional glances, their eyes shining. And when the registrar declared them husband and wife, Chisom ran to embrace the two, almost dropping the rings in the process. "Now we are a family for real." Bamidele picked her up in his arms, looking into her eyes with all the love in the world. Months later, the adoption process was concluded. Bamidele was officially registered as Chisom's father. When he received the document, the new birth certificate with his name, he held it with trembling hands. What he had always dreamed of was now real, had turned into reality. He ran his fingers over his name printed on the paper. Bamidele Falade, father. Ngozi stopped working as a cleaner. Bamidele encouraged her to do a professional course, to follow a dream she had always had but could never realize. She chose to work with gastronomy, something she always had a talent for. She did a course in baking and confectionery, and soon she was selling cakes and pastries, building her own business. She had even managed to rent a small space to set up a bakery and pastry shop. Chisom grew up in a home full of love. She had a present father, a strong mother, and a grandmother who was always nearby. And whenever anyone asked about her father, she pointed to Bamidele with pride, her eyes shining. "This is my daddy, the best daddy in the world." Bamidele never grew tired of hearing that. Each time was like the first. On a Saturday night, already in the new house where the three lived together, a house in Ikeja, Gra Bamidele had bought thinking of family. Chisom asked Bamidele to read a story before sleeping. It was a ritual of theirs, every day, without fail. He sat on the edge of the bed, took her favorite book, a story about a brave princess, and began to read. When he finished, Chisom looked at him with those big, serious eyes and asked, "Daddy, do you love me?" Bamidele smiled, running his hand through her hair, caressing the curls. More than anything in the world, she smiled, satisfied with the answer, and embraced him tightly. "I love you too, Daddy, very much." Bamidele stayed there, embraced with her until she fell asleep. When he left the room, he found Ngozi waiting in the living room, sitting on the sofa with 2 cups of tea. Did she ask again? She did. "And what did you say?" "The truth." Ngozi approached and embraced him, leaning her head on his chest. "Thank you for everything, Bamidele. For having appeared in our lives, for having stayed, for having given us a family." Bamidele kissed her forehead, feeling her perfume, her presence. "Thank you for letting me be part of it. Thank you for giving me the chance to be a father." They stayed there, embraced in silence. They did not need words, they only needed that, to be together. And finally, after so much time alone, Bamidele had everything he had always wanted. It was not a perfect life. They still had bills to pay, they still had problems to resolve, they still had difficult days, but it was a real life, full of love, of laughter, of small moments that made everything worthwhile. And as he looked at Ngozi and thought of Chisom sleeping in the room next door, Bamidele smiled, because finally, he was at home. He had found his place in the world, and nothing had ever been as perfect as that simple moment. And so, what did you think of the story? Leave your opinion in the comments. We love to know what you think. Don't forget to like the video to support us and to subscribe to the channel. Until next time. Adewale Lawal was a millionaire, suspicious of everyone, and believed that everyone had a secret. When he noticed that Blessing Okon, his pregnant cleaner, left every day at the exact same time carrying a heavy bag, he was certain she was hiding something. He decided to follow her, and what he saw behind that door did not just destroy his suspicions, it destroyed everything he believed about people. And on that day, the man who never cried. Our stories have traveled far. Where are you watching from today? Share with us in the comments. The mansion in Lekki Phase 1 was immense, silent, and cold, just like the heart of its owner. Adewale was 42 years old, with a fortune built in the real estate market and an unshakable belief. People always wanted something from you. Always. He had learned this the most painful way possible. His divorce from Ronki had left deep scars. She had simply handed over custody of their daughter, as if returning a defective product, saying she wasn't born to be a mother. She signed the papers and vanished. Since then, Adewale raised Temi alone, or rather, he paid others to raise her. Competent, cold, punctual nannies. He thought that was enough. Providing financially was his role. The rest was detail. But then, Blessing Okon entered their lives. She was 28 years old, 6 months pregnant, and worked as a cleaner. She had been hired on the recommendation of a friend of Adewale's former secretary. On the first day, he barely looked at her, only nodding from a distance before returning to his study. Pregnant women were fragile, slow, problematic. He expected nothing beyond the basic work, but Blessing was not basic. She cleaned the house with impressive efficiency, and despite her large belly, she never complained or asked for favors. And the strangest thing, she always left at the exact same time, every single day, without exception 3:00 p.m. on the dot. She would grab a large, heavy, worn fabric bag and disappear out the door. Adewale began to notice this in the second week. At first, he thought it was a coincidence, but coincidences did not exist in his world. Everything had a motive, everything hid an intention. And that woman, however simple she seemed, was hiding something. He began to observe her with more attention. Blessing was polite but firm. She answered when asked, but never lingered. She didn't gossip, and she didn't ask for cash advances or whine about the difficulties of pregnancy. That was too strange for Adewale. Everyone wanted something. Why not her? One afternoon, he was in the corridor when he heard laughter coming from the living room. He stopped. Laughter in that house. He peeked through the half-open door and saw Temi sitting on the floor playing with building blocks. Blessing was beside her, also sitting, smiling while the girl told a confusing story about horses and castles. And then the princess saved everyone? Temi shouted, animated. She is brave, right? Blessing replied with a sweet and calm voice. Just like you, Temi. Adewale felt something strange in his chest. Anger, discomfort he didn't know. He only knew that it wasn't right. Blessing was the cleaner, not the nanny, not a friend of the family, and she certainly shouldn't be getting emotionally involved with Temi. He entered the room with heavy steps. Temi, go to your room now. The girl looked up, startled. Blessing stood up slowly, adjusting her belly. I am sorry, Mr. Adewale. I was only helping the girl put away the toys. I don't need you to help my daughter. I need you to clean the house. The words came out harsher than he intended. Blessing lowered her eyes, but did not bow. She only agreed and left the room. Temi stood there with tearful eyes. Daddy, why were you mean to Auntie Blessing? She is not your aunt. She is the cleaner, but she is nice to me. Go to your room, Temi. The girl obeyed, but before leaving, she looked at her father with an expression Adewale couldn't decipher. Sadness, disappointment. He brushed the thought aside and returned to his study, but the restlessness continued. In the following days, Adewale began to observe Blessing in an almost obsessive way. He mentally noted the times, the movements, the expressions. She always left at 3:00 p.m., always with that heavy bag. Where did she go? What did she carry inside? He thought about confronting her, but something held him back. Perhaps it was pride, perhaps fear of looking ridiculous. After all, what could a pregnant cleaner be hiding? Theft? Impossible. He checked everything. Nothing went missing. So, what was it? The suspicion became an open wound. Adewale could no longer concentrate on meetings. He kept thinking about that woman, about that bag, about that secret. And the more he thought, the more convinced he became. Blessing was hiding something serious, and he needed to find out what. That was when he made the decision. He would follow her. No matter what was necessary, he would discover the truth. Because Adewale Lawal did not tolerate mysteries, did not tolerate lies, and, most of all, did not tolerate being deceived. He marked the day in his diary, cancelled meetings, prepared a discreet car, and waited. When Blessing left, exactly at 3:00 p.m., with the bag slung over her shoulder and a hurried step, despite her large belly, Adewale was ready. He would follow her to the end, and, finally, would know what that woman was hiding so much. While Adewale fed his suspicion, something much simpler and truer was happening inside that cold mansion. Temi was growing attached to Blessing in a way nobody could explain, and that bothered everyone except the girl. Temi Lawal was 5 years old, and had a loneliness too big to fit inside a body so small. She didn't quite understand what that void she felt was, but she knew it existed. It was as if everyone around her was there in body, but not in truth. The nannies worked their hours, gave her baths, served her food, but none of them stayed, none of them cared, until Blessing arrived. In the beginning, Temi thought she would be just like the others, but soon realized she wasn't. Blessing was different. When the girl spoke, Blessing truly listened. She stopped what she was doing, looked into her eyes, and paid attention. And that was rare. Very rare. Auntie Blessing, do you like unicorns? Temi asked one day while drawing on the coffee table. Blessing was mopping the floor, but stopped and approached. I have never seen one in real life, but I think they are very beautiful. Do you like them? I love them. I want to have a real one. Who knows, maybe one day you'll find one, right? Temi smiled. That kind of response made her feel that her dreams mattered. The nannies always said things like, unicorns don't exist or stop fantasizing. Blessing never did that, but Temi's father didn't like that closeness. Every time he saw Blessing talking to his daughter, Adewale appeared with some excuse to interrupt. He would ask her to go clean another room, or send Temi to her bedroom. He built invisible barriers between the two. And Temi noticed, even being a child, she noticed. Why doesn't Daddy like you? Temi asked one afternoon while Blessing was putting away the scattered toys. Blessing paused for a second, surprised by the question. Your father likes me. He is just busy. No, he isn't. He stays all day in the office, but he doesn't do anything. I see. Blessing smiled with sadness. She knew that kind of loneliness, the loneliness of those who are surrounded by things but empty of people. Sometimes adults get tired, Temi, and when they get tired, they forget to show what they feel. But you don't forget. I try not to forget. Temi hugged Blessing's legs tightly. The cleaner felt a squeeze in her chest. She knew she shouldn't get involved, knew that wasn't her place. But how could she ignore a child who begged for affection? The nannies who worked in the house didn't like Blessing. They thought she was overstepping boundaries, that she was trying to show off, trying to take advantage of the situation. They commented in the corridors in low voices, but loud enough for Blessing to hear. She thinks she's going to become part of the family, one of them said with contempt. Poor thing, when the master finds out what she's doing, he will send her away immediately. Blessing pretended she didn't hear, but she did, and it hurt. She wanted nothing other than to do her job, but she couldn't ignore Temi. She couldn't pretend she didn't see how much that girl needed someone. One day, Adiwale caught the two in the garden. Temi was sitting on Blessing's lap, and Blessing was caressing the girl's hair while telling a story. It was a simple scene, but loaded with something Adiwale couldn't name: tenderness, connection. He didn't know. He only knew that it bothered him deeply. Blessing, can you come here, please? His voice was controlled but firm. Blessing stood up slowly, settling Temi on the garden bench. Stay here, all right? I'll be right back. Temi agreed, but her eyes became worried. Adewale waited for Blessing to approach and spoke quietly, but with harshness. I have already told you that you don't need to entertain my daughter. You were hired to clean the house, not to be a nanny. I know, Mr. Adewale, but the girl was alone. And? You thought you could decide by yourself what is best for her. Blessing took a deep breath. She didn't want to fight, didn't want trouble, but she also did not accept being treated as if she were doing something wrong. I am not deciding anything. I just can't ignore a child when she calls me. If you prefer, I will avoid it. I prefer that. Blessing agreed and went back inside the house. But Temi saw everything, and for the first time, felt anger toward her father, real anger. That night, when Adiwale went to say goodnight, Temi turned her face away. I am angry with you. Adiwale stopped, surprised. Why? Because you are always mean to Auntie Blessing. She is the only one who likes me. Temi, I like you. No, you don't. You only work. You don't even look at me. The words were painful. He tried to answer, but didn't know what to say. Temi turned her back and pulled up the blanket. Adewale left the room in silence. And that night, for the first time in a long time, he felt lost because his daughter was right. He didn't look at her, not truly, and Blessing, the woman he so much suspected, was doing what he should have been doing. But instead of recognizing that, Adewale preferred to blame Blessing. She was getting in the way. She was confusing Temi. She was creating a dangerous emotional dependence. And he needed to find out what else that woman was hiding. Because if she was capable of manipulating the feelings of a child, what else would she be capable of doing? The decision to follow her became even stronger, and he counted the days to execute his plan. Adewale had always prided himself on being a rational man. He did not act on impulse, did not let himself be carried away by emotions. But when it came to Blessing, all that rationality began to crumble, and he hated that. He began to note down everything: times, movements, behaviors, like an amateur detective trying to assemble an invisible puzzle. Blessing always left at 3:00 p.m., always. Even when there was extra work, even when it rained, even when she seemed exhausted. And that bag, that cursed worn fabric bag she carried every day. Adewale began to imagine scenarios. Perhaps she was stealing small things he wouldn't notice immediately. Perhaps she was selling information about him to competitors. Or worse, perhaps she was involved in something illegal. His mind created increasingly absurd possibilities, but he couldn't stop. The silent obsession took over his days. On a Thursday morning, he was in his study when he heard light steps in the corridor. He stood up and peeked through the crack in the door. It was Blessing, carrying a bucket and cleaning cloths. She climbed the stairs slowly, holding her belly with one hand. She seemed tired, very tired. Adewale was suddenly seized by something he didn't want to name: guilt, compassion. He dismissed the thought and returned to his desk, but could not work. He sat staring at the computer screen without seeing anything, thinking about that woman, trying to understand what bothered him so much. It wasn't just the suspicion, it was something else, something deeper and more disturbing. Blessing destabilized him, and Adewale hated being destabilized. At lunchtime, he went down to the kitchen. Blessing was sitting at the small staff table, eating rice, beans, and a piece of chicken. Simple. She chewed slowly, with her free hand resting on her belly, as if calming the baby. "Is everything okay with the food?" Adewale asked, more to say something than out of real interest. Blessing raised her eyes, surprised to see him in the kitchen so early. "It is, Mr. Adewale. Thank you. You need to feed yourself properly. You are pregnant. I know. I am taking care." He stood there, not knowing what to say. Blessing went back to eating quietly. There was no embarrassment in her, no fear, and that irritated him. Why wasn't she afraid of him? Everyone was. "You always leave at the same time," he said, trying to sound casual. Blessing stopped chewing for a second, then swallowed and replied, "Yes, I have a fixed commitment." "What kind of commitment? Personal?" The response was polite but firm. Blessing did not give details, did not justify herself, only went back to eating. Adewale felt his jaw tighten. She was hiding something. He was sure of it. "You know you can trust me, don't you?" He tried, changing his approach. Blessing raised her eyes again. There was something in that look, not defiance, but tiredness. Tiredness from being interrogated, from being judged. "I trust you as my boss, Mr. Adewale, and I respect my work, but my personal life is mine." There, she had drawn the line between them, and Adewale did not like lines he could not cross. He left the kitchen without answering, and from that day on, the obsession worsened. Adewale began to pay attention to things he had previously ignored. The way Blessing folded the clothes, how she arranged the furniture, how she talked quietly to herself while cleaning. She had a precise, almost ritualistic routine, and that intrigued him even more. He also realized that she never asked for anything. "She is strange," he commented to his secretary one afternoon. "Strange how, Mr. Lawal?" "I don't know. Too quiet, too reserved." The secretary shrugged. "She is polite and works well. I don't see a problem," but Adewale did. He saw a problem in every silence, in every discreet smile, in every calculated movement. Blessing was an enigma he needed to unravel, not out of necessity, but out of pure inability to accept the unknown. And then the day he had waited for arrived. Friday, cloudy sky. Adewale cancelled all meetings. He told his secretary he would leave early. He took the keys to the old car he hardly ever used and parked 3 blocks from the mansion. He waited. His heart beat faster than he cared to admit. 3:00 p.m. on the dot. Blessing came out through the side door as always. Bag on her shoulder, hurried step, her large belly swaying with each movement. She looked to the sides, as if checking something, and followed the pavement. Adewale started the car and began to follow her. The streets changed quickly. The noble neighborhood gave way to simpler houses, small shops, cracked pavements. Adewale had never passed through there. It was like entering another world, a world he ignored completely. Blessing walked with determination, despite her visible tiredness. She stopped once to rest, leaning against a post. She took a deep breath, adjusted her bag, and continued. Adewale kept his distance. He didn't want to be seen, but he also didn't want to lose sight of her. His heart beat strongly. There was expectation, fear, anxiety. He was about to discover the truth, and a part of him wondered if he really wanted to know. Blessing turned a corner. Adewale accelerated a little and turned too. And that was when he saw an old building, peeling walls, a faded sign in front. Blessing climbed the steps and entered. Adewale parked and stood watching. What was that place? What was she doing there? He needed to know. He got out of the car, locked the door, and approached slowly. He climbed the same steps Blessing had climbed, peeked through the window, and what he saw changed everything. Adewale never imagined he would be standing there in front of an old building, peeking through the window like a thief. But the need to discover what Blessing was hiding was greater than any embarrassment. He needed to know the truth, and finally, he was about to discover it. The place was a simple old people's home, clean within limits, but clearly maintained with scarce resources. There were rusty wheelchairs leaning against the wall, faded curtains, the smell of cheap disinfectant mixed with something Adewale couldn't identify. Through the window, he saw Blessing. She was in the middle of the hall, surrounded by elderly people, some sitting, others lying on improvised stretchers. Blessing opened the bag that had intrigued Adewale so much and began to take things out of it. Packages of biscuits, fruits, medicines, adult diapers, clean cloths, soap. Adewale stood paralyzed. She wasn't stealing. She wasn't hiding anything illegal. She was taking donations out of her own pocket, bought with the salary that barely allowed her to survive. An elderly woman approached. Blessing hugged her carefully, as if hugging someone too fragile to be held with force. The woman was crying. Blessing wiped her tears with the sleeve of her own blouse and smiled a tired but true smile. Adewale felt something strange in his chest, a pressure, a squeeze. He continued watching. Blessing helped an old man sit up straight in his chair, adjusted the pillow behind his back, offered him water, and talked quietly. The man smiled, a toothless smile, but full of gratitude. She took his hand and stood there just holding it, as if that were enough. And it was. Adewale saw Blessing change the diaper of an old lady who seemed unconscious. She did everything with delicacy, without haste, without disgust, without impatience, as if that were the most important thing in the world. And perhaps it was. For those people, Blessing was the only important thing left. He saw when she sat on the floor beside an old man who was crying alone in a corner. She said nothing, just stayed there present, alive, real. The man stopped crying gradually and leaned his head on her shoulder. Adewale could not turn his eyes away. Each of Blessing's gestures was a blow to his conscience. Each smile she drew from those forgotten faces was a silent accusation. He, who moved millions, had never dedicated a single minute to anyone in that way. He who had everything had never given anything truly. And Blessing, who had almost nothing, gave everything. Adewale felt his eyes burn. He had not cried since his divorce, since Ronke threw in his face that he was incapable of feeling anything. He had agreed at the time. He thought he really didn't feel, that he didn't need to feel. But now, at that moment, standing before that dirty window, looking at a pregnant cleaner taking care of strangers with more love than he had ever given his own daughter, Adewale cried. He cried in silence, hot tears that ran down slowly and burned tears of shame, of regret, of anger at himself. He had followed Blessing, thinking he would discover a dirty secret, and discovered the opposite. He discovered pure goodness, discovered true generosity. He discovered a woman who, even pregnant, even tired, even earning so little, chose to use the little she had to take care of those whom nobody else wanted to take care of. Adewale stepped away from the window and leaned against the outside wall. He took a deep breath, trying to control emotions he didn't know he still had. He ran his hand over his face, wiping the tears. He felt ridiculous, felt small, felt lost. He didn't know what to do with that discovery. He didn't know how to face Blessing after that. He didn't know how to look at himself, because the truth was brutal. He had spent weeks suspecting a woman who was worth more than he would ever be worth. He stood there for a time he didn't know how to measure. When he finally managed to compose himself, he looked through the window once more. Blessing was sitting on an old chair with her hand on her belly, smiling at an old lady who was telling some story. She seemed tired but happy. There was peace on that face, a peace Adewale had never felt. He stepped away slowly, returned to his car, sat in the seat, and remained still, holding the steering wheel. He didn't start the engine, didn't know where to go, didn't know what to think. Everything he believed about the world, about people, about the motives that moved each one, had collapsed that afternoon. Blessing didn't want anything from him, didn't want money, didn't want favors, didn't want recognition. She only wanted to do good. And Adewale, who had always believed that goodness was naivety, that generosity was weakness, that every gesture had a hidden intention, was before the living proof that he was wrong, completely wrong. He started the car and returned home, but he was no longer the same man. Something had changed, something deep and irreversible, and he knew he could no longer look at Blessing in the same way. He could no longer treat her with coldness, could no longer pretend she was only the cleaner, because she was much more than that. She was everything he had never been, everything he had never known how to be, everything he could perhaps learn to be if he had courage. When he arrived home, Temi was in the living room. "Pai, where were you?" Adewale looked at his daughter, really looked, and saw what had always been there but he had never wanted to see. A girl alone, needy, asking for love in all possible ways. And he blind, deaf, too busy with himself, had never noticed. "I was resolving an important thing," he replied, his voice still choked. Temi tilted her head, curious. "Are you okay?" Adewale knelt in front of his daughter, holding her tiny hands. "No, but I will be." Temi didn't understand, but she smiled. And in that smile, Adewale saw hope. Perhaps there was still time. Perhaps he could still fix everything. Perhaps Blessing, without knowing, had saved not only those forgotten elderly people in the home, but also him and the daughter he had almost lost. The truth was simple and devastating. He had spent his whole life building an empire, but had forgotten to build a family. And Blessing, the person he had so much suspected, was teaching him what really mattered, without charging anything, without asking for anything, only by being who she was. He could not sleep that night. He lay awake, replaying each scene he had witnessed at the home, each of Blessing's gestures, each smile drawn from those abandoned faces. And the more he thought, the more the shame grew within him. He had always considered himself a just man, paid his employees well, complied with the law, made occasional donations to charitable institutions, more for tax exemption than for a real desire to help. He thought that was enough, thought he was fulfilling his role in society, but now he realized he had never really looked at the suffering of others, had never cared, had never gotten involved. He kept everything at a safe distance, protected by money and indifference. And Blessing, with her minimum wage, did more in an afternoon than he had done in his whole life. When the sun rose, Adewale was already awake. He showered, dressed, and went down to the kitchen. Blessing had not yet arrived. He prepared a coffee and stood waiting, anxious. He didn't know how he would act when he saw her. Should he tell her he followed her? Should he pretend nothing happened? Should he ask for forgiveness? The side door opened. Blessing entered, greeted the cook, and went straight to the cupboard to get the cleaning materials. She had a more tired face than usual, deep dark circles, slow steps. Adewale observed everything. She had no car. She took a crowded bus, pregnant, carrying weight, worked all day, went to the home, took care of the elderly, and returned home late at night. How did she still have the strength to wake up early and return? "Good morning, Blessing," Adewale said, trying to sound natural. She raised her eyes, surprised to see him in the kitchen so early. "Good morning, Mr. Adewale. Are you okay? You seem tired." Blessing smiled lightly, but it wasn't a true smile. It was that kind of smile people use to disguise the weight they carry. "I am. I only slept poorly because of the baby." Adewale wanted to ask more, wanted to say he knew everything, wanted to offer help, but the words wouldn't come out. He didn't know how to do that. He didn't know how to connect with people in a genuine way. He had spent so much time closed in on himself that he had forgotten how to open up. Blessing took the broom and went to clean the living room. Adewale stood there, feeling useless. He needed to do something, but what? Later, while working in his study, he could not concentrate. The image of Blessing at the home returned insistently. He saw the abandoned, forgotten elderly as if they were disposable garbage. He saw her hand holding the trembling hand of an old man crying alone in a corner. He saw the infinite patience with which she took care of each one. And then he asked himself, how many people had he discarded in his life? How many employees had he dismissed without thinking twice? How many people had he ignored on the street? How many lives had he crossed without seeing? Adewale had always thought success was accumulating, building, growing, but had never thought about donating, taking care, being present. He took his phone and typed into the search bar, Community Old People's Homes, Agege, Lagos. Several results appeared: precarious places, maintained with scarce donations, functioning on a volunteer basis. He clicked on some, read reports, saw photos. That reality had always existed, but he had never paid attention. Adewale closed his phone and rubbed his face with his hands. He needed to do something, but didn't know how to start. He didn't want Blessing to know he followed her. He didn't want to seem invasive, but he also couldn't pretend that nothing had changed. In the late afternoon, when Blessing was about to leave, Adewale called her. "Blessing, can I talk to you for a moment?" She stopped, surprised. "Of course, Mr. Adewale." Adewale took a deep breath, deciding to risk it. "I know you have a personal commitment every afternoon, and I know you leave always at the same time for that." Blessing became tense. "Yes, and I wanted to ask your forgiveness." She blinked, confused. "Forgiveness for what?" "For having suspected you, for having treated you with coldness, for not having given you the respect you deserved." Blessing stood in silence for a moment, then sighed. "You don't need to apologize. I understand. I am only the cleaner. It is normal that you didn't trust me." "No, it is not normal. And you are not only the cleaner, you are much more than that." Blessing looked away, uncomfortable. "I need to go, Mr. Adewale. I know. I only wanted you to know that if you need anything, you can ask me." She looked at him, trying to understand where that came from, but didn't ask, only agreed and left. Adewale stood there, feeling inadequate. He didn't know how to fix what he had broken, didn't know how to regain the trust of someone he had never truly respected, but knew he needed to try. That night, Temi asked something that caught Adewale off guard. "Daddy, why don't we help people?" Adewale raised his eyes from his plate. "What do you mean?" "Auntie Blessing helps. She goes every day to take care of old people whom nobody wants." "Why don't we do that?" Adewale felt his heart squeeze. "How do you know that?" "She told me." She said there is a place where the old people are alone and sad, and that she goes there to make them smile. Adewale was silent. Temi continued, I wanted to go with her one day. Will she let me? I don't know, daughter. Do you think it is cool to help others? Adewale looked at the girl. That simple question carried an immense weight, because the answer was not about what he thought. It was about who he was and who he wanted Temi to become. I think it is the most important thing someone can do, he replied, his voice firm. Temi smiled. Then we should help too, right? Adewale agreed, and at that moment made a decision. He would go to the home personally, not to spy, not to judge, but to understand, to learn, to, who knows, begin to be a different man. Blessing had shown him something nobody else had managed, that value is not measured in money, that true wealth is in making a difference in someone's life, and that maybe, just maybe, he still had time to become someone better, someone Temi could admire, someone he himself could respect when looking in the mirror. Adewale began to pay more attention to his daughter, and the more he observed, the more he realized the obvious. Temi always knew who really cared about her. Children have this gift. They don't let themselves be deceived by appearances or empty speeches. They feel. And Temi felt that Blessing loved her truly. It was Saturday morning. Adewale went down to the living room and found Temi drawing on the coffee table. She was concentrated, her tongue out, typical of her when she made a great effort. What are you drawing? He asked, sitting beside her. Temi raised the paper. There were 3 figures, a pregnant woman, a small girl, and a tall man. It's Auntie Blessing, me, and you. Adewale felt a squeeze in his chest. Why did you draw Blessing with us? Temi shrugged, as if the answer were obvious. Because she is part of the family. But she is not of the family, daughter. She works here. Temi stopped coloring and looked at her father with those big, honest eyes. But she likes me for real, Daddy. The others only pretend. Adewale did not know what to answer, because she was right, totally right, and he had no arguments to deny that simple and devastating truth. The nannies take care of you. Taking care is different from liking. The phrase hit Adewale like a punch in the stomach. Temi went back to coloring quietly, while her father sat there paralyzed, trying to process what he had just heard. How do you know she likes you? Adewale asked, his voice lower. Because she looks at me. What do you mean? She looks for real, Daddy. The others look, but they don't see. Auntie Blessing sees. She knows when I am sad. She knows when I am afraid. She knows when I am happy. And she always asks if I am okay. Adewale felt his eyes burn. When was the last time he had asked if his daughter was okay? When was the last time he had really looked at her and seen what she was feeling? And what else does she do that you like? He asked, needing to understand. Temi thought for a moment. She embraces me for real. It's not that quick embrace people give. It's an embrace of staying together, you know? Adewale didn't know, but he wanted to know. And she tells stories, and listens to me when I talk, and doesn't keep looking at her phone when I am talking. And she smiles at me and says, I am special. Each phrase was a silent accusation, because Adewale had never done any of that. He embraced Temi in a mechanical way, listened halfway, spent more time on his phone than with her. He had never said she was special. He thought that was obvious, but it wasn't. Do you love Blessing? Adewale asked, his voice choked. Temi stopped coloring and looked at her father with seriousness. I love her. She is like a mother, but better. Better how? Because she chose to like me. My real mother didn't want to stay with me, but Auntie Blessing stays because she wants to. Isn't that better? Adewale could not hold it. The tears came without warning. He hugged his daughter tightly, burying his face in her hair. Temi stayed quiet, letting her father cry. She didn't quite understand what was happening, but she knew it was important. When Adewale finally let go, he wiped his face with his hands. Forgive me, daughter. Forgive me for not having been the father you deserved. Temi put her tiny hand on her father's face. You can still be, Daddy. Auntie Blessing always says it's never too late to restart. Adewale smiled through the tears. She knows things, doesn't she? Yes. That's why I love her. At that moment, Adewale understood something fundamental. Blessing was not stealing Temi's love. She was filling a void he himself had created. And instead of feeling jealousy or anger, he felt gratitude. Because if it weren't for Blessing, Temi would have grown up without any affection. Daddy, can I ask you something? Of course. Never send Auntie Blessing away. Adewale held his daughter's hand. I promise. Temi smiled quietly and went back to coloring. Adewale sat there watching his daughter, and realized she was already more emotionally mature than he was, because Temi understood what really mattered. She understood that love is not bought. that presence is more valuable than any expensive gift, that a sincere embrace is worth more than 1,000 empty words. And who had taught her that? Blessing, the simple woman he had almost despised, the only person in that house who knew what it was to love truly. Later, Adewale went to Temi's room and found a notebook under the bed. Curious, he opened it. They were drawings, several drawings, almost all with Blessing. Blessing smiling, Blessing embracing Temi, Blessing holding the girl's hand. In some drawings, Adewale also appeared, but always distant, always far. The message was clear. Adewale closed the notebook and took a deep breath. He needed to change. He could no longer live on automatic. He could no longer be only the financial provider. He needed to be a father for real, and he needed to learn from Blessing, because she, even being young, even being pregnant, even having little, knew more about love and care than he would ever know. And if he wanted to be worthy of the daughter he had, he needed to follow the example of that incredible woman life had placed in his path. That night, when Temi was already sleeping, Adewale entered her room, sat on the edge of the bed, and stood looking at the calm face of the girl. She breathed softly, embracing a little teddy bear. Blessing had sewn when the original tore. Adewale ran his hand through Temi's hair with delicacy. "I am going to be better," he whispered. "I promise." And for the first time in a long time, Adewale Lawal felt he was on the right path, because he had discovered something that no business course, no management book, no motivational lecture would ever teach, that to be truly human is to be present, is to take care, is to love. The change in Adewale was subtle, but it was happening. He spent more time with Temi, asked questions about her day, had dinner at the table instead of eating in his study, and treated Blessing with genuine respect, no longer as an invisible employee, but as someone he admired deeply. But the world around him had not changed, and that would be proven in a cruel way on a night none of them would forget. Adewale organized a business dinner at the mansion. There were 8 guests, influential businessmen, important investors, people from his same social circle. He wanted to close a big deal, and that night was strategic. He hired a catering service, but asked Blessing to stay to help with whatever was necessary. Blessing accepted, even though she was tired. She was in her 8th month of pregnancy, and each movement was an effort, but she needed the extra money Adewale had offered for the additional work. The guests arrived punctually. Men in expensive suits, women in designer dresses, imported perfumes, conversations about investments, international trips, properties. Adewale circulated through the living room, smiling, greeting, playing the perfect host. Blessing was in the kitchen, helping to organize the trays that would be served, wearing her usual simple uniform. Her large belly stretched the fabric. She had tied her hair in a low bun and tried to maintain an erect posture. Even with her back aching, the dinner began quietly. The guests praised the food, laughed at Adewale's jokes, talked about the market. Everything went well until one of the guests, Chief Mrs. Toyin Osoba, an arrogant woman in her 50s who owned a network of beauty salons, asked for more wine. Blessing attended to her promptly, took the bottle, and went to the table. She leaned carefully to serve her, but her large belly made the movement difficult. Blessing's sleeve lightly brushed the crystal glass, which tipped over and spilled red wine onto the white tablecloth. The silence was immediate. Everyone stopped eating. Everyone looked at the red stains spreading across the expensive fabric. Blessing stood paralyzed, her face red with embarrassment. "I am sorry, ma'am. It was an accident. I will clean it now." Toyin looked at the stain, then at Blessing, and let out a cold laugh. "Of course it was an accident. How could you manage to serve with that huge belly?" Some guests laughed quietly. Others turned their eyes away, embarrassed. Adewale felt his body stiffen, but said nothing yet. He was trying to assess the situation. Blessing took a napkin and began to dry the cloth. "I am truly sorry, ma'am. I will change the tablecloth now." But Toyin did not stop. "Look, dear, I don't know who hired you pregnant like this, but it was a terrible idea. You can barely move. You should be at home, resting, or better yet, looking for the father of this child." The phrase fell like a bomb. Blessing stopped drying the tablecloth, raised her eyes slowly, and there was pain there, deep pain, but also dignity. She did not lower her head, did not apologize again. She just stood still, holding the stained napkin. "The father of my child is no longer here," Blessing said, her voice firm despite the tremor. "But that is not your problem." Toyin raised one of her eyebrows, surprised by the answer. "Ah, so that's it. You got pregnant." The guy fled. "And now you are here working pregnant. What an original story. More laughter, low and cruel." Adewale felt anger rise like hot lava, but before he could speak, Temi appeared at the door of the dining room. She should have been sleeping, but the noise had awakened her. She was in her pajamas, holding her teddy bear, and looked at the scene with wide, frightened eyes. "Auntie Blessing!" Her voice came out weak. Blessing turned and saw the girl. Her face fell for a second. She did not want Temi to see that. She did not want the girl to witness that humiliation. Toyin saw Temi and smiled, but it was a poisonous smile. "Ah, Adewale's daughter. What a sweetheart. It must be good to have someone to play with you, right, dear? Even if it is the cleaner." Temi did not answer. She only looked at her father, expecting him to do something, expecting him to defend Blessing, expecting him to be the man she needed him to be. And Adewale finally acted. He stood up slowly. His chair scraped against the floor with a dry sound. All eyes turned to him. The silence became dense, heavy. Adewale looked at Toyin with a coldness she had never seen before. "Toyin, you need to leave my house now." The woman blinked, confused. "What? You heard me. Leave, and take your lack of education with you." "Adewale, you are joking, right?" "It was only a joke." "It was not a joke. It was disrespect, and I do not accept disrespect in my house, especially with someone who is worth 100 times more than you." Toyin turned red. The other guests looked at each other, not knowing what to do. "You are throwing me out because of an employee?" "I am throwing you out because you are a horrible person, and I do not want horrible people near my daughter." Adewale looked around the table. "In fact, all of you can leave. The dinner is over." There was a murmur, low protests, but nobody dared challenge Adewale. They knew that look. It was the look of someone who would not go back. One by one, the guests stood up and left, some murmuring apologies, others just furious. When the last one left, Adewale turned to Blessing. She was standing in the same place, still holding the napkin. Tears ran silently down her face. They were not tears of anger. They were tears of someone who finally felt seen, defended, respected. Temi ran and hugged Blessing's legs. "Don't cry, Auntie Blessing. You are the best person in the world." Blessing knelt with difficulty and embraced the girl. And there, in that embrace, there was more love than in any expensive dinner, in any million-naira business, in any achievement Adewale had ever had. He approached, slowly. "Blessing, forgive me. I should have stopped that sooner." She looked at him, wiping her tears. "You don't need to apologize. You defended me. Nobody has ever done that for me. Then it is time someone did." Adewale extended his hand. Blessing looked at it, then accepted, and in that simple handshake, something changed. They were no longer boss and employee. They were two people who respected each other, who saw each other, who cared. And Temi, there in the middle, was the living proof that true love does not choose social class, does not choose last name, does not choose bank account. Love chooses who takes care, who stays, who looks truly. And on that night, Adewale finally understood that. After that night, something definitive changed in Adewale Lawal. It was no longer just a discomfort or a passing reflection. It was a deep, irreversible transformation. He could no longer return to being who he was before, and he didn't want to. For the first time in his life, Adewale understood that real power was not in dominating, but in serving. In the days following the dinner, the news spread quickly through Adewale's social circle. He had thrown out important guests because of a cleaner. The comments were cruel, sarcastic. Some called him crazy. Others said he was having a nervous breakdown. Some even insinuated he was romantically involved with Blessing, which would explain the exaggerated reaction. Adewale ignored it all for the first time. He didn't care about the opinion of others, didn't care about reputation, didn't care about the contracts that could be lost, because he had discovered something much greater. Integrity is worth more than social acceptance. He called Blessing for a talk. They sat in the living room on a quiet afternoon. Temi was at school. The house was silent. Blessing seemed apprehensive, as if expecting a scolding or even dismissal. "Blessing, I know where you go every day," Adewale began directly. She turned pale. "Did you follow me?" "Yes, and forgive me for that. It was invasive, it was wrong, but it was the best thing I have ever done." Blessing sat confused. "What do you mean?" "Because I saw who you really are. I saw what you do for those people, and that transformed me." She lowered her eyes, not knowing what to say. "I only do what I can, Mr. Adewale. It is not a big thing. It is a big thing. It is everything. And I want to help." Blessing raised her eyes, surprised. "Help how?" "I want to invest in the old people's home, renovate the building, hire more staff, buy equipment, guarantee medicines, quality food, everything necessary." Blessing sat in silence for a long moment, then shook her head. You don't need to do that. I know, but I want to. And I have a condition. She became tense. What? You continue being the leader of everything. I enter with the money, but you command, because you know what they need. You know how to take care of them. I don't know yet. Blessing felt her eyes fill with tears. Why are you doing this? Adewale took a deep breath. Because you showed me that I was living wrongly. I spent my whole life accumulating, building, conquering, but I never looked back to see who stayed behind. You taught me that true wealth is not in what you have, but in what you give. Blessing wiped her tears. I didn't teach anything, Mr. Adewale. I only do what my heart tells me. Then your heart is better than mine. It never was. They fell silent, a comfortable silence, full of mutual respect, full of understanding. I accept, Blessing said finally, but on one condition too. What? That you go there personally, meet the people, listen to their stories, because money without presence changes nothing, Adewale agreed. I will go, and on the following Saturday, Adewale, Temi, and Blessing went together to the home. It was the first time Adewale returned after having spied on Blessing that day that changed everything, but now it was different. He wasn't hidden, he wasn't judging. He was there to learn, to understand, to, who knows, begin to repair part of the damage his indifference had caused throughout his life. The elderly received Blessing with celebration, smiles, embraces, words of affection, and when they saw she brought a man and a child, they were curious. Mama Shade, this is Mr. Adewale and this is Temi, Blessing introduced them. The elderly woman of 78 years looked at Adewale with suspicion. Are you rich? Adewale didn't expect the question so directly. I am. And why did you come here? To take a photo and post it on the internet? Adewale felt the blow, but it was deserved. No, I came because Blessing showed me that I was living wrongly, and I want to help. Mama Shade studied his face for a long moment, then smiled. Then you are not rich. You have money, but you are not rich, because truly rich people don't need to learn to help. They are already born knowing. Adewale lowered his head. She was right. Temi approached Mama Shade and extended her hand. Hi, I am Auntie Blessing's friend. Can I be your friend too? The old lady's face lit up. Of course, my daughter. Come here, come. Temi sat beside her and began to talk. Mama Shade held the girl's tiny hand, like someone holding a fragile treasure. And Adewale realized, those people did not only need money, they needed presence, affection, they needed to be seen. He spent the rest of the afternoon there. He talked with Baba Chinedu, an old man of 82 years who had not spoken to anyone for months. He heard the story of Mama Helen, who wept as she told how her children abandoned her. He helped serve lunch, held trembling hands. In each gesture, in each word, Adewale felt he was finally doing something that truly mattered. When they left, it was already late. Temi was tired but happy. Daddy, can we come back always? Adewale looked at his daughter and smiled. Always. Blessing observed everything in silence, and there was gratitude in her gaze, but also something more, hope. Because if a man like Adewale could change, then anyone could. That night, Adewale could not sleep. He lay thinking about the stories he had heard, the hands he had held, the smiles he had seen, and realized he had spent 42 years of life without truly living. He had spent 42 years accumulating empty things while real people, with real stories, were forgotten. But now he knew, and now he would do differently, because Blessing had given him the greatest gift anyone can give, the chance to restart, the chance to be better, the chance to leave a legacy that was not only financial, but human, and he would not waste that chance. Adewale lost no time. On the following Monday, he gathered his legal and financial team. He said he wanted to create a permanent trust fund for the community old people's home in Egege. It would not be a one-off donation, it would be a long-term commitment, with structure, planning, and serious monitoring. Some partners tried to dissuade him, arguing that it would not bring financial return. Adewale replied with a phrase nobody expected to hear from him. Not everything in life needs to yield a profit. The renovation began 3 weeks later. Adewale hired engineers, bricklayers, electricians. He ordered the replacement of the old wiring that represented a fire hazard. He renovated the bathrooms, painted the walls, changed the beds, bought orthopedic mattresses suitable for the elderly, installed air conditioning, renovated the kitchen, and hired a nutritionist to design a balanced menu. But most importantly, he hired more carers trained, gentle people who truly cared. Blessing participated in all the interviews. She knew how to identify who had the true vocation and who was there only for the salary. and Adewale trusted her judgment completely. The elderly could not believe what was happening. Mama Shade wept every day, saying it was a miracle that God had finally looked at them. Baba Chinedu, who lived in silence, began to speak again. Mama Helen laughed as she helped choose the colors of the new curtains. But Adewale made sure to make something clear to everyone involved. This was not about him, it was about Blessing. She was the soul of that place. She was the heart that kept everything alive. He was only the resource, and resources without soul save no one. Blessing, however, refused any kind of tribute or public recognition. She did not want a plaque with her name, did not want to appear in newspaper articles, did not want to be called a heroine. She only wanted to continue doing what she had always done, taking care. Adewale respected her, and that made her admire him even more. One day, while supervising the installation of an accessibility ramp, Blessing looked at Adewale and asked something that had been bottled up for weeks. "Why are you really doing this?" Adewale stopped and faced her. "I have already told you, you transformed me. But you had everything, money, power, respect. Why throw that away for people society has forgotten?" Adewale smiled, a sad smile. "Because I discovered that having everything and being nothing is the worst loneliness that exists. I had money, Blessing, but I had no life. I had power, but no purpose. I had respect, but no love. You showed me that I was empty, and I don't want to die empty." Blessing felt a squeeze in her chest. "You are no longer empty." "No, thanks to you." She looked away, embarrassed. "I didn't do anything special. You did. You saved 3 lives. Mine, Temmie's, and your own. Because if you continued carrying the world alone, you would have collapsed sooner or equal." Blessing did not answer, but she knew he was right. Temmie became a constant presence at the home. She visited every Saturday with her father, brought drawings for the elderly, sang songs she had learned at school, sat on Mama Shade's lap and listened to old stories, helped Baba Chinedu do crossword puzzles. And in each visit, she learned something that no expensive school would ever teach: empathy, compassion, respect for elders. Adewale observed his daughter with pride. She was growing up with values he never had. She was learning that serving is not lowering oneself, but elevating oneself. That taking care of others is not weakness, but strength. And all of that was thanks to Blessing. A month after the renovation, the home was unrecognizable. It was no longer a place of abandonment. It was a home. It had life. It had color. It had human warmth. The elderly had daily activities: physiotherapy, craft classes, music sessions, gardening. They felt useful again, felt alive again. And Adewale understood something fundamental. He was not only helping those elderly, he was helping himself. Each visit, each conversation, each gesture of care healed him of years of coldness and indifference. He began to take partners and clients to visit the home. In the beginning, they went out of obligation, but they always left transformed. Some offered to help, others made donations, others volunteered. The home became an example. Other institutions began to seek out Adewale, asking for guidance. He created a support network, a model that could be replicated. And Blessing was at the center of everything, coordinating, guiding, taking care. Her baby was about to be born. Adewale insisted that she stop working, but Blessing refused, saying the home kept her alive, that taking care of the elderly gave her purpose. And Adewale did not insist. He had learned to respect her choices, but he did something that surprised everyone. He offered Blessing a house, a simple but comfortable house, close to the home. He said it was for her to raise her child with dignity, that she deserved that. Blessing refused in the beginning, thinking it was charity. But Adewale explained that it was not charity, it was justice. She had worked so much, given so much, saved so many lives. She deserved to have a secure home. Blessing accepted with tears in her eyes. And when she moved, Temmie made sure to help decorate the baby's room. They painted the walls a soft yellow, assembled the crib together, and put up curtains with drawings of stars. Adewale watched it all and realized he was building something much greater than a renovated home. He was building a family, a strange, non-conventional family, but real, formed by people who chose each other, who took care of each other, who loved each other. And for the first time in his life, Adewale felt complete. Blessing's baby was born on a Tuesday morning. It was Adewale who took her to the hospital. She was at the home when her water broke. She panicked for a second, but he was there calm, secure, saying that everything was fine, that he would take care of everything. And he did. He stayed in the waiting room during the 8 hours of labor. Temmie was with him, anxious, praying quietly that Auntie Blessing and the baby would be fine. When the nurse finally came out and said that a healthy boy had been born and that Blessing was doing well, Temi shouted with joy and hugged her father tightly. Adewale felt his eyes fill with tears. They were able to see Blessing and the baby a few hours later. She was exhausted, but radiant. She held her son in her arms with a tenderness that hurt. It was so beautiful. The baby was small, with dark hair and round cheeks. He slept quietly, oblivious to the world around him. "He is beautiful," Temi whispered, afraid of waking him. "He is," Blessing agreed, smiling. "What are you going to call him?" Blessing looked at Adewale. There was gratitude in that look, and something more, something neither of them yet knew how to name. "Samuel. I'm going to call him Samuel." Adewale smiled. "It's a beautiful name. It means, God has heard." I thought it matched, because he is already bringing so much light to my life. Temi asked to hold the baby. Blessing hesitated, but Adewale helped the girl sit in the chair beside the bed and placed Samuel in her arms with care. Temi looked at that small face and fell in love instantly. Samuel, I am your sister. Well, not for real, but almost. And I will protect you always." Adewale and Blessing looked at each other, and both understood that this was more than coincidence. It was destiny, it was purpose, it was the universe repairing broken things and joining people who needed to be together. Blessing stayed 5 days in the hospital. Adewale paid for a comfortable private room. He visited every day, always bringing Temi. They brought flowers, fruits, words of affection, and Blessing felt loved in a way she had never felt before. When she was discharged, Adewale took her to the house he had given her. Everything was ready, clean, organized. Samuel's room was perfect. Blessing cried upon entering, unable to hold it back. It was the first time in her life she had a space of her own, a secure place to raise her son. "Thank you," she said, her voice choked. "Thank you for everything." Adewale placed his hand on her shoulder. "You don't need to thank me. You did much more for me than I can ever repay." Blessing shook her head. "I only did what my heart told me, and it was enough to change everything." In the following weeks, Adewale realized he could not stay away from Blessing and Samuel. He visited every day, always with some excuse to bring groceries, to see if everything was okay with the house, to take Temi to play with the baby. But the truth was simpler and more terrifying. He was falling in love. It wasn't physical attraction, though Blessing was beautiful. It was something deeper. It was admiration. It was respect. It was the recognition that this woman was everything he had always searched for, but had never known how to name. She was goodness in human form. She was strength disguised as fragility. She was light in the midst of darkness. But Adewale was afraid of ruining everything, afraid that she would think he was taking advantage, afraid that the feeling was not mutual. It was Temi who noticed first. One afternoon, while they were returning from Blessing's house, she asked, "Daddy, do you like Auntie Blessing?" Adewale almost lost control of the car. "Of course I like her. She is an incredible person." "Not like that. Do you like her? Like, as a girlfriend?" Adewale swallowed hard. "Why are you asking that?" "Because you look at her differently, and she looks at you differently too." Adewale was silent, not knowing what to answer. Temi continued, "I think you should be together. That way we would become a family for real." "It's not that simple, daughter." "Why not?" "Because she might not want to. Because it might be strange. Because you are afraid." Adewale stopped at the red light and looked at his daughter. She was right. He was afraid. Afraid of being rejected, afraid of losing the friendship they had built, afraid of ruining everything. But Temi, with her childhood wisdom, said something that changed everything. "Daddy, Auntie Blessing always says we only regret what we don't do, not what we do." Adewale smiled. That night, he could not sleep. He lay thinking about Blessing, about everything she represented, about how his life had changed since she appeared. He didn't want to live without her nearby anymore. He didn't want to pretend it was only gratitude. It was love, true love. The next day, he asked Temi to stay with the nanny and went alone to Blessing's house. He knocked on the door, his heart racing. She opened it, surprised to see him without warning. "Adewale, did something happen? I need to talk to you." She let him enter. Samuel was sleeping in his crib. The house smelled of baby powder and cleanliness. Blessing served coffee, and they sat at the small kitchen table. "What is it?" she asked, worried. Adewale took a deep breath. "I spent my whole life building things, companies, buildings, fortunes, but I never built anything that truly mattered until you appeared." Blessing sat quietly, waiting. "You taught me what it is to be human. You taught me to love my daughter. You taught me that money is worth nothing if it doesn't come with purpose. And I fell in love with you." Blessing, her eyes widened. Adewale, I know it might seem like madness. I know I am older. I know you just had a baby. I know maybe you will never see me in that way. But I needed to tell you, because I can no longer pretend. Blessing stood in silence for a long moment, then stood up, went to the window, and stood looking out. Adewale waited, his heart racing. I also like you, she said, finally. Adewale stood up in a leap. What? She turned with tears in her eyes. I fell in love with the man you became, not with what you were, but with what you are now. With the present father, with the generous man, with the person who chooses to do good. Adewale approached slowly. So, can we try? Blessing smiled through the tears. We can. They embraced. And in that embrace, there was a promise. There was a future. There was love. When Temi found out, she threw a celebration, saying that now they were a family for real, and they were a family formed by choice, by love. The following months were of adaptation, but also of happiness. Adewale asked Blessing to marry him 6 months later. She accepted. They married in a simple ceremony at the home, surrounded by the elderly they so much loved. Temi was the flower girl. Samuel was in Mama Shade's arms. Baba Chinedu played the acoustic guitar, and everyone cried with emotion. Adewale had finally understood the meaning of life. It was not to accumulate, it was to love, to take care, to be present, and he had all of that now. He had Blessing, he had Temi, he had Samuel, whom he legally adopted and raised as his son. He had a family, he had purpose. And it all began with an absurd suspicion about a pregnant cleaner who was hiding a secret. But the secret was not dirty, it was pure, it was love, and that love saved them all. I would like to open a parenthesis here as the editor of this story. It is easy to look at Adewale and criticize him, but the truth is he represents much of our current society that values having over being. But I leave the question to you. If his pride had been greater than his conscience, how would little Temi be today? What would you do in his place? Let's talk about this here in the comments.